Hello and good evening, everybody. Um, my name is Prachi Gupta, and I work as an archivist at the Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore. I'm very excited to be here today and to have this opportunity to moderate today's MAP talk, which is in collaboration with the Bangalore International Center. Now, the talk is titled Tattoos and Taboos. It's a very interesting subject and something that is very close and personal to myself. But before we dive into the talk, I would first of all like to welcome and thank all of you for making the time today for this talk. We know the times are really tough. We're all going through this pandemic, which doesn't seem to have any end, and we're all getting through however possible. So we hope that today's talk will be able to give you a good breather amidst these stressful times. Now, the talk titled Tattoos and Taboos is going to examine body art as a living tradition and will unpack the changing nature of contemporary tattoo culture in India, from a subversive act to a socially acceptable form of expression. In addition, this discussion will also look at the cultural representation and appropriation of traditional or folk motifs, designs, and patterns in the mainstream tattoo culture. Now, to discuss these very interesting points, we have three distinguished speakers with us today: Moranngam Khaling, Viren Swami, and Sanyukta Basu. I would like to begin by giving a small introduction to our speakers, starting with Moranngam Khaling, who is popularly known as Mo Naga, which is his artist name. Mo is an independent researcher and revivalist of traditional art and craft and the design culture of Northeast India. He is the founder and practicing scholar at the Headhunters Inc. in Guwahati, which focuses on the study and preservation of traditional Naga tattoos. He also founded Godna, the tattoo village, in 2016 in New Delhi, which is an initiative for the study, preservation, and promotion of the rich tattoo culture of India. Munaga is also a world renowned tattoo artist, specializing in traditional and neo traditional art. A more detailed bio of his can be found in the chat box. Our next speaker, Viren Swami, is a professor of social psychology at Anglia Ruskin University and is the director of the Center for Psychological Research at Godna University. His research is focused on body image, body art, and mental health. He's the author of over 200 academic papers and three books, including Attraction Explained and The Psychology of Physical Attraction. A more detailed bio of Viren's work can also be found in the chat box. Our third speaker for today is Sanyukta Basu, who is a writer, photographer, lawyer, and feminist scholar. She's presently working with the National Herald as an editorial consultant and writes on women, politics, minority rights, and social issues. She's also pursuing a PhD on women and gender studies. A more detailed bio of Sanyukta's work can also be found in the chat box below. I also want to thank Anand from Signable for doing the Indian Sign Language interpretation of today's session. I would like to request the audience members to please use the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screens, when we will be taking questions, which will be in the last 10 minutes of the session. Now, let's dive into the session and begin with each of our speakers giving a little bit of sneak peek into the work that they do. And we'll begin with Viren, followed by Monaga, and then Sanyukta. Viren, over to you.
So thank you, Prachi. So as you've already mentioned, I'm a professor of social psychology, and the thing I'm mainly interested in is what we generally refer to as body image. So body image is basically how we feel, how we think, and how we relate to our physical selves. And that physical self can be hugely important in not just in terms of social relationships with other people, but also in terms of influencing how we think about and how we feel about our everyday beings. And as part of that research over the past decade, I have been looking at how body art and tattooing in particular influences our body image. So I'm particularly interested, firstly, in how body art has an influence in how we perceive other people, how it changes our perceptions of others, but also how it changes our perceptions of ourselves, particularly in terms of what we call our need for uniqueness, this idea that we have to feel unique and individual. So that's really my research. I'm happy to talk more about it during the talk itself. I was just going to say one other thing. So my personal connection with Bangalore is that my mum, it's my mum's hometown, and I know she's tuned in. She's in the audience today, and many members of her family are there as well. So I just wanted to say hello to all of them.
That's so sweet, Viren. Welcome to Viren's mother as well, along with the rest of the audience. We're very happy to have you here, and we'll move over to Monaga now.
Hi, Prachi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for having me. This is my first time on Zoom, so a little bit nervous, but at the same time very excited. Do you want me to give my own intro with the video?
Yeah, just a little bit, or maybe we could just dive into your video as well.
Yeah, let's just dive into it, and then I can just speak over it here. So my name is Monaga. I'm from Manipur. I belong to one of the smallest Naga tribe called Wipo. We are in total just about 1,800 in numbers. And for me, tradition, culture, identity is very important. And that's what I was ingrained with as when I was growing up, watching elders. And that's what I've been doing in the last 10 years, traveling all across the Naga hills in the remotest villages, researching, documenting, trying to find and salvage whatever is left about the past way of life when Nagas were headhunters. Back in the days when tattoos were part of our life, it was a very strong expression or mark of identity, and so much more than just the tattoo that we often tend to perceive. Today, I have come back home. I've opened the tattoo village in the hills, where I'm practicing this art form of traditional hand tapping, hand poking, with the mission to preserve it and revive it and make it living art form once again. That's pretty much what it is right now. And at the tattoo village, I'm also growing something which I call the tattoo garden, where I'm planting all different types of plants that are used by different tribes. And there I'm also teaching. I'm also trying to encourage young generation to come and learn about the significance and how important this art form is in defining our cultural and historical identity. It's not just a mark of aesthetics or mark of beauty, but much more. And as we go through this session, let's discuss more about it. I'll be happy to take questions later. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mo, and thank you for showing that very beautiful video, tracking your journey. Now we'll move over to Sanyukta.
Okay, so as Prachi just introduced me, I do a lot of things. I studied law, then I went into communications. I'm working as an editor, journalist, also a photographer. Today I'm here as a photographer, in my identity as a photographer. And I call myself a feminist photographer. The reason I wanted to share as part of my entry, some of the other things that I have done, which I call feminist photography, is not because I have done that or that I'm trying to claim that I have done that, but because I just want to tell whenever I find an audience, I feel like telling everybody that, that you can always look at everything around us from a feminist perspective. So when I picked up the camera, it was just a hobby thing. But as I started getting interested in photography, I used my camera to look at things from a feminist lens. So some of the things that I've done. So Tattoo Project is one of those feminist photography project, which is deeply connected to my own identity. And about that, I'll just talk in, after I've talked about these few other projects I've done. One is that I did a 5-city metro city tour for First Post magazine on exploring with my camera how women and men use the public space differently. And I chose, so some of these, if I can, so some of these photos are here. Just a minute, I'll just go, So, like for example, this. So we imagine that the city is friendly to women, or that at least the urban women have equal access to the city as the men have, but actually they don't. Public spaces, parks, metro stations, everything is very restricted, and we can only access them in a certain way at a certain period of time with certain dresses in certain behavior. We can't explore the city or use the city in exactly the same way that men do. So this is something that I did. Then I have done, so these are some of the photos. I can share this PPT later and people can explore these photos. And other thing is that I tried to explore, like the one photo you see here is Miss Tibet Pema's photo. And I tried to capture her power rather than her, more her beauty or her sexuality. Urban women with swag is one of the projects that I tried doing. Universal Sisterhood is another project. So so these are some of the photography projects that I have done, which I call as feminist photography. These are very minuscule work, not too much in the big scheme of things. But all I'm trying to say is that it is possible to look at things in, from feminist perspective in whatever way we can. Coming to how the project started, the tattoo project started, it started with my own body image. I have a birthmark. I don't have a perfect face, but I love the idea of aesthetics, beauty, art in body. And it took me time to sort of, come to learn to love my own body. It's a journey. So the thing is that I also have a lot of existential angst. So towards my 39th birthday, usually people get this in their 40th birthday. I got it in my 39th when I was turning 39. I started getting a lot of existential angst. Kya hai, what is happening in life? Where is life going? And then after a lot of, I write to process my thoughts. So this is exactly what I have shared in the screen is exactly what I wrote in my diary. And the last line of that was that, this is it. I don't have a compass. I'm lost at sea. I'm on a sailboat, lost at sea, and I don't know where my life is going, but I'm going with the wind, wherever the wind is taking me. And that's fine. And then it hit me, I was like, this is it. This is my life. I want it tattooed on my body. I'm not going to change it ever. So then I thought that it took me such a long process to finally, and I always wanted to have the tattoos. My piercings, as you saw in the previous photo, I have a lot of piercings. That started a lot before I finally got a tattoo. So, because I was waiting for the right thing to be tattooed on my body. And then I realized that this is the story behind my tattoo, such a long story. And there must be other stories. Other women must be having the stories. So I tried to, imagine what is the global perception of imagery of tattoo. It's either exotic, sexualized, white women mostly, or tribal women. It's mysterious. There's a TV series with the women with tattoo, which is called Blind Spot. And there's a photo of that. But I wanted to sort of change that imagery. I wanted to find out that when people talk about, women with tattoos, they should not, and when we say public space, I mean, Google these days is a public space. So I tried to find out what is, available on Google. This is what is available on Google when you try to look for women with tattoos. But the stories are not there. The women is missing from these imagery. And this is because it's a photography project. I thought the image and the story, these two has to go together. That's when I thought that I'll do this, coffee table book. So yeah, that's about my introduction. Oh, there's one more thing that I want to share is this taboo that, there was this murder happened of Archivist Gupta in 2016. He was a 17-year-old boy, and one of the first in the headlines was that, oh, the grandmother has a tattoo. Like, that was the talking point, that the grieving in this photo that I have shared here, people could not see the grief of the mother and the grandmother. People saw the tattoo and they started talking about, oh, what kind of a debauched life. No wonder the child have gone wary and has gone bad, and therefore his murder happened. So that's the taboo. So these were some of the things that I thought that, it needs to be broken. Yeah, I hope I was within time. Yeah.
Thank you, Sanyukta, for taking us through your varied body of work. So I would actually like to start with you. You just spoke about the project in focus, where you documented the stories and tattoos of women. And this, as you said, started with self-acceptance of yourself.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask, what could you tell us about maybe a story or two, like the most impactful stories of these women that you spoke to and interviewed and documented, something that really impacted you, personally?
Something that impacted me, it's very difficult. There were quite a few stories. So there was Vimla. Her story is that she had a perfect marriage. She had a fairy tale marriage, but soon after her marriage, she started feeling that something was draining her. Something was draining her energy, her life force. Something was sucking. And she could not understand. It was invisible. Something invisible was draining her life force out of her. And years later, she realized that her husband, who was a pilot, and Bimla herself was a pilot, and she loves flying. So, and she realized that this, well-off and well-educated person was addicted to gambling, and he was bungling fund, and then a lot of other things. Then she, at the age of 48, she got divorced. And then I have the photo. Let me just share the photo of her. At the age of 48, she got a divorce, and then her tattoo. And then she got her tattoo. Her first tattoo was depiction of this, her journey. She got a heart with the wings, and that she finally felt liberated after her divorce. She knew that something was pulling her down, but she finally could liberate it. And then she got it she told me about the fact that she had to be conscious where in her body she would put it. She wanted it to be in a place which was not too visible so that people wouldn't judge her, but also, also something that could be seen. So that's where she got it on the back waist. So that was one impactful story. That's Vimla's. And I wanted to do this project, not just capture the tattoos, but also the face and the other things that I captured in them, their intelligence, their courage. Those things were also very important as part of this project. And Pratima, so on my right hand side is Pratima, and also Vaishnavi's story. These are, I think, is the most interesting stories that I remember. So Pratima's, it's not a very story, like dramatic story. She also had a bad marriage, and she went out through it. Things it was very bad for her, and then she got rid of that. She came out of that marriage. And her tattoo was again her story of a dagger cutting deep through her skin, and from the blood drops, flowers emerging. That's her tattoo, and you can see it on the screen. So, but this would be many women's stories. A bad marriage and then a liberating divorce is many women's story. What is interesting, what I remember about her, is that when I met her for the shoot, she told me that, I know you, my ex-husband told me about you when you were traveling with him on some trip. And I was like, I don't remember this person. I don't remember the people I traveled with. I don't remember what trip she's talking about, but she remembers me when she has not even met me. She's only heard about me from her ex-husband. And I thought that this woman must be an extremely deep woman who feels things very deeply and remembers, and maybe everything she touches, she kind of absorbs. And I found her very fascinating. And when I spoke to her, she was also very like, the whole time that I spoke to her, she was very quiet and very poised, but also, had a lot to share. So very, very, very interesting woman. So I would always remember. And then there was Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi had a disease, something with her brain, some clotting or something, that she used to faint and lose her memory for moments, that she would just pass out and she will not remember what happened. And she had to be rushed to the hospital quite a few times. And this one time, the doctor said that if this thing happens again to you, we don't know if you will come out of it in this deep state of coma. And when I met her, she was living those days when she did not know whether it will happen to her again or not. And there she was, a ravishing woman, beautiful, awesome body with all these body art. She has got about 6 tattoos, each very interesting. One of these that I have shared is this head, body, and that medical, the symbol of that medical science. It was like she has been in and out of life and death. She has been in deep coma, coming out of it. And then she lives that life full of her art and herself. So again, very fascinating stories. And these are some of the other women. Each one of them I find it very problematic that I have to tell 1 or 2 stories. Each of these women are so fascinating. And here in this photo, you see Jael, and then you see Megha and Jael, and then you see Shatorupa. Megha and Jael, Megha basically is the inspiration, apart from my own story, for the project. She was the beginning point. She was the first person I wanted to capture. She has got about 26 tattoos now. When I shot her, when I did the shoot, she had like about 23 or 22. Now she probably has 26 or 28. So she is the starting point. Then there is Jael. Jael lost her mother to cancer. She is a survivor. Shatorupa, again, she had issues with her depression. She did drugs. She did all kinds of things, and then she came out of it. So yeah, those are some of the stories.
Wow, thank you so much, Sanyukta, for sharing these amazing stories. The photographs look beautiful, and it's such a beautiful thing that people and women, in this case, have used tattoos to mark such important events and memories in their lives, which is it's just wonderful. And it's a great thing that you are working on this project, and we hope to see more
Yeah.
very soon.
The thing is that I have not worked enough. I constantly feel guilty about it, and I constantly feel that I get an imposter syndrome, that I am talking about all these big things, capturing stories. I have only done like 15-20 women. I mean, I should be doing hundreds of them. So I've not done enough, and I want to do more. But yeah, disclaimer there that I've not done enough. Yeah.
No, but it's a great start to something really phenomenal. So I actually want to, taking from Sanyukta's project, I would like to ask Viren, I would like to know what is the connection between tattoo as a body art and more so as a permanent sort of body art, between this and being, perceived by people in a certain way, by the society in a certain way. What changes does having a tattoo cause in the way that others perceive you and you yourself perceive you? And especially, like, hearing the stories that Sanyukta has told us, I think the tattoos also had a great mental impact, on all those people, because there are such strong emotional stories connected, meanings connected to their tattoos. So how do you think this works?
So I think that there are two different questions there. One is how we perceive other people with tattoos and what we think in terms of stereotypical perceptions of people with tattoos, and the other is how it affects ourselves. The first question is slightly tricky to answer without talking a bit of the history of tattoos. So historically, tattoos were, at least in the West and in many other countries as well, it was typically associated with what we would now call out groups. So an out group is a group that would stereotypically be perceived as deviant or abnormal in some way. So historically, for example, tattooing in the West was associated with sailors, with working class groups, with circus entertainers. And it's only really beginning in the 1990s that we've seen kind of a shift in perceptions of tattoos. Beginning in the 1990s, at least in the West, there was a very quick change in how quickly tattoos became mainstream. I mean, if you look at the kind of contemporary research in Western Europe, in North America, anywhere up to about a half of the population have at least one tattoo. And this is a huge shift from, say, 20 or 30 years ago, when very few people would have had tattoos. So in the space of about 20 or 30 years, we've seen a huge shift in how tattoos have become mainstream in at least Western societies, but also probably in many other societies around the world. And that in turn has had a huge change, has had an effect in terms of how we relate to tattoos. I think tattoos now don't have the old negative connotations. Historically, for example, we used to think of people with tattoos as being more aggressive, more risky, more sexually deviant. All those old stereotypes are no longer true. And when we ask participants in our studies to say, what do you think of people with tattoos, they generally perceived as like everyone else. And that, I think, is a function of how mainstream tattoos have become. Everyone will probably know someone who has a tattoo. And if they become so ubiquitous, if they become so commonplace that you know someone who has a tattoo, all those old negative stereotypes become really difficult to maintain. So the next question is, what effect does it have on ourselves? And that question, I think the question really is, why do we get tattooed? And I think there are lots of motivations to get tattooed. Historically, probably the key driver was about social identity. It was about marking the self as being associated with a particular group. If you were a sailor, historically, you would have marked just your body to say, I am a sailor, I am part of a group. More recently, I think there has been two different sets of points that people have made. One is this idea that tattoos are meaningless. They're a form of fashion accessorizing. And this idea has really come from this idea that tattoos have become so mainstream, they become part of consumer culture. Everyone gets a tattoo now just to show off or just to express something about themselves. And they're essentially meaningless. They've lost their cultural value. They've lost their social value as objects in themselves. My own research, I think, takes slightly different perspective. I think tattoos often do have individual, but also social meaning. And they have individual and social meaning in the sense that individually, they often represent something about the self. We find among, again, predominantly Western individuals, one of the main motivations for getting tattooed is about self-expression. It's about expressing something individual about themselves. And we generally find that people who have what we call a high need for uniqueness and a feeling that they have to demonstrate their individuality or their feelings of self-expression are more likely to get a tattoo. So in that sense, you might begin to see a reason why people get tattooed, particularly in societies that tell you how to relate to your body, that police your body, that tell you your body has to be used in a physical way, in a particular way, where your body is essentially commodified. The kind of limits of what you can and can't do with your body are so prescribed that getting tattooed can now be seen as a way of reclaiming some agency over your body, to say, this is my body, this is my physical self, and I will do with my physical self what I want to do, irrespective of what everyone else wants me to do. So in that sense, tattooing now can be seen for a lot of people, I think, as one of the most important means of self-expression. It is a way of expressing their individuality. It's a way of maintaining links with other people. And yes, it's part of consumer culture as well in many societies, but I think for individuals, it remains one of the most important ways of saying, I exist, my experiences exist. And recording those experiences in the form of art is really important.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for answering this question so well. There were so many important points that you touched, and especially about the, reclaiming the agency over one's body, which is also something I think we can see in Sanyukta's project. And do you think that this idea of reclaiming the agency over the body and the scrutiny that comes possibly with having tattoos, if at all, do you think it's different for women? Does it change when there's a woman, and especially depending on the kind of tattoos and the placement of the tattoos?
Mhm.
Do you think that causes a change in the way the woman is perceived?
So historically, absolutely. I mean, historically, at least again in the West, when women get tattooed, they were often perceived negatively. They would have been stereotypically perceived as being more promiscuous, as being more likely to abuse alcohol, more likely to take drugs, and all kinds of other negative connotations. I mean, historically as well, women with visible tattoos were less likely to be employed in many customer-facing occupations. So there are historical reasons why the art of tattooing itself was gendered. I think some of that still remains. I think in some research that we've conducted, we still find still women are perceived more negatively, particularly if they have visible tattoos, and often if they have visible tattoos in stereotypical positions, particularly on the lower back, we generally find those negative connotations still. But I think that's beginning to change. Again, in the West, I think one of the big changes over the last 10 years is the number of female artists who have come into the industry and who are now changing the landscape of tattooing itself. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched LA Ink and Miami Ink, but they're female artists on those shows. One of the tattoo studios was completely run by female artists. And I think that's beginning to change the idea that tattooing is essentially a male preserve. Tattooing now has become much more democratic, much more diverse, and we see that represented in some of the prevalence estimates in North America and Western Europe. There are no gender differences. Women are just as likely as men to get tattooed. With one difference: women are still more likely to get a non-visible tattoo, so a tattoo that can be covered up. And I suspect that still has a lot to do with the fact that women are still judged more negatively when they have a visible tattoo.
Right, right.
I would just like to add one thing, that it's about this judging. When I decided to get my piercings, the tattoo was not, again, because it can be hidden in many ways. You can wear a cloth, a particular kind, unless it's on your face, it's not that visible. When I decided to go for piercings, I was told by everybody that you would never be employed if you get something done on your face. So the thing is that the judging part very much exists, at least in Indian society, still exists. And about the reclaiming of, I believe that in spite of all that, there are young women who are today, and that's the thing, that is the very act of doing the tattoo, whether whether the design conveys a story or not. Like in case of Pratima, the symbol, the tattoo itself tells a story. But I have also met women who just wanted to get a tattoo. They picked up a design, maybe a flower or something, some symbol, and they thought, okay, this is what I like and this is what I want. But even that act of getting something done to their body was an act of reclaiming their body, was an act of self-expression, knowingly that, I could be judged for it, that this is not my tradition. As opposed to, you were asking me earlier, we were discussing this, that the traditional tattoos are where women are following a tradition. Right. So when women follow a tradition, it's different. But when it is not part of mainstream, when you probably would be judged when it comes to marriage market or job market, and you still do it because you are brave, that is a big deal, I feel. So it's a great step of reclaiming and self-expression. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will second your thoughts on this. Having tattoos myself, I've had these questions absolutely all the time. And, what would the parents' reaction be? What would the, friends' reaction be? And it's been surprising, and it's been exactly as expected in many cases. But, well, the war is on. And women are taking back their space.
Yeah, no, even I would like to do these stories in tier 2 cities. I've done in like metro cities. I would love to meet more women who are from the smaller towns and they are going and getting a tattoos.
Right.
Yeah.
Prachi, one thing I would say, if you having this cultural baggage and particularly generational baggage, one thing I always say is that tattooing has been part of human culture for thousands of years. I mean, if you go to there's a museum at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology. If you go there, there is a natural human mummified there, and he's kind of famously known as Otzi the Iceman. And Otzi the Iceman has 61 tattoos. He lived 5,000 years ago. And even
Wow.
recent research has suggested that the Egyptian mummies often show signs of being tattooed. Tattooing exists in many different cultures, and I think the big change is, I think, in the content of tattoos has changed. I think that from traditional tattooing, the content of mainstream tattooing in the West has become very much more diversified. Often they appropriate designs from tribal designs. When tattooing in the West first became popular in the early 1990s, one of the most famous, or the kind of most popular versions, were so-called tribal designs. Tribal designs were essentially stolen from the South Pacific. They were an expression of status. They were an expression of honor in the South Pacific, but they were taken and appropriated in the West as a symbol of fashion. And I think, although we don't see that so often now, I think the contemporary version of tattooing has become much more democratic. It allows people to express themselves. And I think for women as well, for many women, it allows them to express trauma. Sheila Jeffries, who's a feminist scholar, has done a lot of research on showing how women who have experienced trauma, who've experienced sexual abuse, often get tattooed to mark themselves and to mark that experience, but also to demonstrate that their physical self still exists and still is powerful enough to challenge patriarchal norms.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, coming on to the topic of cultural appropriation and traditional tattooing, I would like to move on to Mo Naga. Um, I would like to start by asking Mo, how did you get interested in tattooing? First of all, you are my super duper senior in from NIFT Hyderabad, and I actually got to know about your tattooing through one of the seniors who you had tattooed, and I was like, okay, so there's this person, our senior, who does tattoos, and I've been following your work for a very long time, but I want to know, how did you start with tattooing, and what motivated you to start documenting the traditional tattoos of the Naga community? You've spent over a decade studying the tattoos, being with the people, talking to them, interviewing, documenting their stories. So what motivated you to do all of this?
Yeah, I started tattooing in my first year. In fact, in my first semester of college, it was purely by accident. It wasn't me who was interested. I had no idea whatsoever about tattoo. Another friend of mine who woke up after a party, and there had been a tattoo session happening on the next room. So he came home and he was like, we should definitely experiment. We should try our hands on tattooing. And the thing is, my friend doesn't come from a design or art background. So he wanted somebody who can draw, somebody who could, who would be able to, handle the machine. So I was up for it because, as you know, the first semester we are encouraged to explore different media, art, and different materials. So I took it up as an exploration. It was not because of any trend or because of purely just because of curiosity. Like it just instantly it sparked a curiosity in me as to how could somebody make such beautiful art on the body, on a living canvas. So that's how my journey started, and very soon I was very deeply involved because often it would not heal very well, or back in the days you don't have all these YouTubes and all these informations. The only thing that we have access to back then in the form of social media was Orkut, and in India there were just about 3-4 tattoo studios, and all of us were just starting off. None of us knew exactly what we were doing. We were all discovering by experimentation. So that's how my journey started, and I started taking it more and more seriously because every time I tattoo, the way it healed or the approach of getting tattoo would be different, you know. So I started doing lesser tattoos to understand how the skin works, or giving time to my friends, you know, to work on the design. And that's how I was tattooing my whole 4 years of college, you know. And but towards the end of college, I I was studying about Naga textiles. I wanted to do my final project on Naga textiles, and that's when I stumbled upon a Naga tattoo, like a Konya tattoo, a man with a facial tattoo, and it just surprised me because being a Naga, I had no idea that we have such such traditions, and that's where it all started. I started Googling, I started reading, I started researching, I started buying books, I started meeting people, and the more I looked for information, the lesser I found, because till that point, back in those days, there were not many people. I would say almost, I could not find anybody from India who was documenting or who was doing anything for this, you know, art. And uh, and also I happened to be at the very right time, because that was those were the years when Big Rivers Museum uh, they uh, they gave access to their archives and their manuscripts and their photos, and I must have been one of the first people to start exploring and those informations, and it really helped me, because uh, whoever I asked in the Naga community, my elders, they had no information, you know, and whatever little information that I could find, bits and pieces here and there, noted down by anthropologists and historians, not necessarily going there studying about tattoos, but coming across while they in their journey. So I started collecting all those informations, and uh, it took me 4 years after college to really compile everything, and that's when I felt that now I'm ready to go and meet the elders and personally learn more, because by this time I already knew, uh, had an idea of how significant this art is, and there was no institute, no government, no, just there's nobody who was doing anything about this. Whereas if we talk about textiles, if we talk about handicrafts, if we talk about stories, folklore, songs, you know, there are so many institutions and organizations supported by government, NGOs, doing so many different, you know, a lot of work going on, but nothing for this ancient art form. And so I was very serious by the time when I got this information. So 2012, finally, I started venturing into the villages in the most remotest corners of the East, and started meeting them, taking information for them uh, from 19th century, uh, old photographs, which were back in the days very rare, taking information to that village, meeting the elders, giving them informations about what's happening to their the photos that were being taken, and also learning from them. So that's how it all started, and it's still going on. It's still going on. It's almost 13 years now, but it's still going on.
That's amazing. It's such an important thing because this is a traditional community we are speaking about, right? And this art is very much a part of their identity. And if it's not documented, it's just going to vanish and disappear, which is why what the work that you're doing is so very important. Now, I would like to ask you, you do something called Neo Naga tattoos, where you do combine traditional elements with the contemporary, times, and could you speak a little bit about that? And also, in doing so, what is your idea of cultural appropriation? Because we are talking about a very specific kind of motifs and art, tattoo art, which is significant to a community. So how do you balance that with your clients? Also, more, we're having a little bit of trouble with your internet connection, so maybe you can turn off your video. Maybe that'll help.
Cultural appropriation, misinterpretation is one that I have. Can you hear me, Prachi?
Yeah, yeah. We can hear
Yeah.
you. We can hear.
So yes, okay. The first Naga tattoo I ever did was in 2013 December, and which is after many years of studying. And then the following years in 2014, I only did about 3 Naga tattoos. So I've been very cautious about it. In fact, more than cautious, I've always been scared about because I don't have any reference. I don't have anyone who can guide me. I'm also doing the research, which is also about retrieving and getting information. At the same time, I also need to promote so that people can start questioning about appropriation and misinterpretation. And at the same time, I also have to fight appropriation and misinterpretation. So there are 3 angles which I have to, very tread very carefully. So when we talk about traditional tattoo, overall, I cannot generalize and I cannot talk about other culture. But if we talk about Naga tattoo in particular, I would say that, this is an art form, an expression, a language, which our people have discarded. They have conveniently and but not consciously, they have been put in a situation where it doesn't feel like any of any importance to them. So right now they are not really thinking about it. Plus, moreover, if you talk about art and culture and design, design and art comes after, once your stomach is filled, once you feel secure, once your livelihood is taken care of, But for the Nagas, for the last many decades, it has been a fight for survival. So when you're fighting for survival, you can't really afford. You don't have so much time or capacity to look into this matter. And with the arrival of Christianity, which want to destroy whatever they feel is not appropriate, and tattoo being one, according to them. So right now at this point, tattoo is not something they are very proud of. So the question of appropriation is very, very far. So what I'm doing right now is researching, documenting, and keeping it for the time and waiting for those days, for the days when the Nagas, the youth, and the people will come up and say that, okay, this is ours. We want to, when they want to reclaim it and when they find pride in it again. But at this moment, then they have no idea about what those tattoos mean and what those tattoos stands for. And so right now, I have to play the role of protection, promotion, and also preservation,
Right.
And that is the reason why I had to develop a style called Neo-Naga. Traditional tattoos of the Nagas, there are so many. There are about 20 Naga tribes which I have in my list who have tattoo traditions, and I don't give any of their tattoos to another tribe, even within the Naga community, you know. So if you are, let's say, an owl, then I will, and if you want to get a traditional tattoo of your tribe, then I will help you get it, you know, and but I don't give it to another tribe. Okay, so that's how I keep traditional tattoo, and then but how do I promote it then? Because the Naga people don't want to get tattooed, so how do I promote? You know, so my study is not only about tattoos. It doesn't restrict only to tattoos. My studies is about art and design culture, folklores, folktales, history, their migration, you know, through the study of tattoos, through the studies of art and design culture of my people. I am trying to connect and understand relations between communities, tribes and nations, and this happens to be one subject which uh, has not been explored much by scholars and other experts yet. Right. So I keep all this information very guarded, you know. That's why my tattoos, when I do the Naga tattoos, I don't have any captions, I don't have any explanations. It is between me and the person who receives it, and all of them are by the time they get the tattoo after consultation, they are very much aware of what is appropriation, what is not. And to tell you honestly, most of my clients, when they come to me, are very sensitive about this matter. They are always like, especially the white people, and like, I hope more that I'm not appropriating or I'm not offending by getting this. And that is why my Naga tattoo session is always precedes with a long consultation. Sometimes my consultation lasts for a day. You know, I don't even tattoo that day. We spend the whole day learning about Naga and about their culture, about their art, you know. So Naga tattoo, the traditional tattoo, is for the community, and Neo Naga tattoo is a new form of expression. It's like, you know, I feel that, you know, every culture, every tradition must evolve with time. It cannot just stay stagnant. And not just tattoos, but even the woodwork, the craft work, the textiles, everything has been like stagnant for decades now. And for tattoos, I am also working on textiles, handicraft, handlooms, but my focus is mainly on the tattoos because right now I'm the only one who is doing this.
Yes.
Yeah. So to sum it up, I'm keeping it very guarded information. You know, I don't share it very easily. And those who come and get tattoo from me, they also keep it very guarded because through the consultation, they also understand what the value of that tattoo and what role they are playing, you know, in this program of revival and reclaiming, you know, because they may not be Nagas, but they are becoming an agent of this change. They become an ambassador for us, and slowly, gradually, I hope to inspire more and more Naga people to come and get tattoo, because right now they have no information, they have no access to information about their own tattoo tradition. Until and unless they come to me, they would not know right now, right? And if I give it out in the open right now, many publishers have reached out to me to publish book. But the thing is, if I do that right now, it will easily be appropriated and misinterpreted.
Yeah.
I have people writing from Spain, from Italy, from US, requesting to send designs which they want to pay, you know, full amount and all. I don't do that because it is, for me, it is not just tattoo. It is not just culture. It is not just tradition. It's a lot more. And I play all the three roles of protection, promotion, and preservation. So So I'm very cautious, very careful about it. But along the way, in the beginning, when I started, there may have been some mistakes, but it's part of the process. Yeah, so that's what I want to tell about appropriation and Naga tattoo. Hopefully one day we will stand up, the community will stand up when others misappropriate it. But right now it is more about spreading awareness and education, so that is the stage right now.
That's a beautiful thing that you're doing. I mean, it's important on so many levels, and the thing that you educate your clients about the importance of the tattoo itself, and also that there's this change in the mindset of people, where you said that people are sensitive towards the idea of cultural appropriation. I think that's a great change that we're seeing from a time when people did not really think about these things so much. So, well, we have sort of reached to the very end of the session. And before we take on with the audience questions, I would like to thank all of you, all three of our speakers, for being here, making the time for this session. It was so interesting, and we had such great insights coming from all of you about different aspects of tattoo culture. So, thank you. And we will now move on to the audience questions. Okay, so this question is for Sanyukta from Shatruba Bhattacharya. Her question is about the personalities of the women whom you have photographed. Beyond the stories that are represented on their bodies through tattoos, would you say that their personalities are also reflected in the tattoos they choose to get?
Okay, so Shaturupa is one of the women that I just have photographed. She's one of my project participants. And as I was a Shaturupa High, as I was just saying earlier, that yes, it's the tattoo itself is not the only thing that is part of your identity. It's a package. So basically that is what I was trying to do with my project, and that's what it also came out, that the woman herself, her identity, her personality, those things is probably somewhere leading her to getting the tattoo. And then when she gets the tattoo, it also kinds of grows on her. So like if I give Shatrupa's example, she has this tattoo of a sun and a lion on her feet, and she is like, when I met her, and if you see the photographs, she's bright as sun. She's like bubbly, and her smile is bright as sun. Now it is hard to tell whether she consciously decided that, okay, I'll get a sun and because I'm bright as sun, or is it because the personality grows on her and the tattoo grows on her? It's just, but the point of the project is to capture that entire self behind the tattoo. So when we look at a woman with a tattoo on the street, like I was earlier showing, that you have Avesh Das Gupta's grandmother and mother's photo on the TV being splashed, and instead of looking at their grief or knowing anything about their life, people are looking at her tattoo and saying, oh, what kind of a grandma, she has a tattoo. I mean, this is Calcutta, because so Calcutta still is, I mean, I imagine this in like UP or something. Anyway, the point is that you get judged by just looking at the tattoo, but the tattoo carries so many more other dimensions. The personality, the stories, and also, so the story behind the tattoo, when from the day the woman decided to get the tattoo, then there is also the story, forward to it, because after getting a tattoo also she went through a lot of other kind of experiences. Maybe somebody said heard something about the tattoo, etc. So it's a package. And when I met these women, it was my project included that aspect, that I will not only capture their tattoos, but also their stories and also their other aspects. So I'll just take 30 seconds more. I just want to share Shaturupa's few photos that I've showed one, but like, a few other photos of Shaturupa itself. So, for example, this one, and Yeah. So, like this, she had this bright smile. So that is also part of Vimla's, this is her other tattoo, and this is her, this tattoo. So when I photographed Vimla, I wanted to capture her personality in the sense that she's seen life through, she's 48, she's seen life through many ups and downs, she's achieved a lot of things in her life. I wanted to capture that. Then there were women who were just who were bubbly, and I wanted to capture that smile. In case of Pratima, I wanted to capture that, that kind of like looking into a void. She was that kind of a person, a little intriguing, and her look was, she's there but not really there. So it's a package. So yeah, I hope I answered the question.
All right. Well, so we have a question which says, could it be the case that public perception of a tattoo, especially within an urban Indian city context, is solely the result of a colonial view on the idea of the body? Or are there other ideologies that have influenced this perception?
Who is this question for?
It's not really directed, but I mean, whoever, Viren, Sanyukta, Mo, whoever wants to take it. Oh, well, yes, sorry. I'm sorry. This is directed to Viren.
I'm probably not the right person to ask. I have very little experience of Indian urban centers, except when I was a very young child. I suspect there are lots of things happening. I think it's gendered, it's based on class, it's based on caste, it's based on age, it's based on generation. I don't think there is a single ideology that informs us of what a tattoo means and how it's expressed within particular cultures. I think these things are so contextualized, and the response that we have at the individual level is going to be very different across cultures. It's going to be very different across age groups. It's going to be different across genders. So I don't think there is a single answer to that question.
I would like to also add, Viren is very right. You can't generalize. The answer is not generalized, but there is, and not just in tattoo culture, a lot of our morality standards have been shaped by the colonial times. So it has been studied, it has been said in many other contexts also. For example, the criminalization of homosexuality came from the British law, whereas we had a much more fluid. Our history shows that the traditional Indian culture or mythologies has references to a much more fluid sexuality. Similarly, the Victorian standard of morality, the tattoo is also, so judging women because she has a tattoo is also part of, yes, so to some extent that is correct, but it also can't be generalized, because we also cannot, I also would not approve, I don't kind of approve the glorification of everything that was in the past and damning everything that came from the colonials or modernity or Western. So I wouldn't either glorify the traditional, like I said, there is also a tradition of women being forcefully tattooed with the name of their caste or their husband's name or their family's name. Now that was not cool. So we can't always say that, yes, it was part of a lot of, like sense of belonging. So tribal tattoos, that was part of a sense of belonging to a community, but could also come with a pressure to conform to that community. So therefore, yes, partly it came from sort of the colonial practices, but it also has its own, there were always, women were always judged for taking a decision related to their body on their own. Anything that they do on their own, without listening to their parents or their peers or their society, or the religion, they would be judged, and it has been judged for 10,000 years. It has been true. It's not changed much. So yeah.
One thing I would add is even the colonial ideology of body art and tattooing wasn't singular. There wasn't a single morality code. In the late 19th century, for example, lots of upper class individuals from Britain and Western Europe would get tattooed, particularly when the first electric tattoo machine was invented in the late 19th century. Lots of upper class people got tattooed, and they got tattooed for a very specific reason. to demonstrate their worldliness. They would go to places like India and Malaya and South Pacific and get tattooed and come back and say, look at me, I want to impress you with my tattoos. And that reason was very different for working class individuals. Working class individuals would express something about the individuality. Upper class people would impress other people with their tattoos. It was a way of saying, I am worldly, I have been to India, I have
traveled.
been to,
Yeah,
exactly.
Wow.
So the morality code of the colonials wasn't singular. It wasn't a single
yeah.
version.
So none of these are actually singular. That's, I completely agree.
Right. Thank you, Sanyukta and Viren, for answering this question so wonderfully. Okay, we have one last question for Mo, which says, how can we reclaim our diverse cultural identity by making sure it doesn't succumb into blind consumerism in order to keep itself profitable and alive? Could state funding help in this matter, maybe through museum exhibits, art festivals, drama, and theater?
Yes, it definitely would help. That's what I've been trying to do for the past 1 decade, holding exhibitions, workshops, seminars, speaking in college and universities, spreading awareness. Definitely the state needs to play an important role here. Just to add on to this, is one fact that there is no other country like India when we talk about tattoo diversity, of tattoo traditions. We have from Tamil Nadu to Gujarat to Himachal Pradesh to Nagaland, all over India, and yet tattoo is not listed in the art and culture of our in the States. So I think there's so much more to be done, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about consumerism, money. First, we need to, I have a feeling that we really need to study about it first, because right now we are not aware of it here much, but it's very big in Europe. So we talk about Indian motifs, Indian designs inspired from traditional Indian tattoo designs from the subcontinent, basically from Nepal and other parts of the subcontinent. It's very, very big, So right now we don't even know, we don't even care, So appropriation is very, very far, First we need to educate ourselves. We need to realize what we have, understand it, and if we feel that this is important, then we can save it. Otherwise, we can leave it behind. But we cannot take this action without having a conscious, understanding of it. So the state really has to play. And when I started my journey, I really wanted to travel all over India. My dream was like, I'm going to document everything. But gradually, when I started going about it, I started realizing that if I just do 10% of Naga tattoo, in my lifetime, it's a very, very big achievement, because tattooing stopped more than 60 years ago. So the last elders who have tattoos now were teenagers, were young girls and young boys, So they themselves don't have much knowledge about it. So it's a fight against time, and it's not a thing that one artist, one person, one scholar can do. This is something that the people have to, come together, and the state has to take role in this. And I did went and meet officials at the R&D department at the center, and they were very fascinated and very interested. But yeah, we have a long way to start the work of yeah.
Absolutely. Education and developing this conscience, this, educating people, giving them more knowledge is the first step towards making anything important out of this. Well, with this question.
Prachi, I would like to take one question. I want to take one question. It's by Gayatri Shanbag. So, while listening to this within the context of Mehendis and Hinas are also part of our celebration, and that's okay, but why are tattoos judged? Yeah. So like I again said that, that It's because what is allowed and what is not allowed depends upon who is maintaining the cultural codes of the society and who is making this. So mehendis are part of this marriage or other ceremonies that are culturally approved, socially approved. Therefore, they are okay. But if the same woman, if a woman would elope with some guy and then she would get a mehndi and get a marriage done, neither would the mehndi be approved nor the marriage be approved. So it all depends upon what is allowed and what is not allowed. Always is depends upon who is maintaining that power. So that's where it all boils down to. It's not the act of tattoo itself, but that decision to get something to do with my body. That's what is judged.
Right, absolutely. What a wonderful answer. And I only wish we had more time because there's so many more questions and there's so many.
I mean, we should I would like it if more questions were answered.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we only have so much time today with us. And on behalf of the MAP team, I would like to thank all our speakers for making the time for this, for being so wonderful with the questions and answers and sharing their valuable insights. Thank you again to Anand from Signable for doing the Indian Sign Language interpretation of the session. Thank you to the Bangalore International Center. And for more updates on MAP's events, exhibitions, workshops, please visit our website. The link to the same is in the chat box. And after this very, very wonderful session, we would definitely want to know how you guys felt about the session. So please do fill in the survey. The link to the same is also in the chat box. So yeah, this is it. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.